Okay, well, probably the best place to begin here for you and I during our WordPress journey together here is to answer the question, what is a blog exactly? Well, you probably already have a rough idea of exactly what a blog is, but you might not have a sort of a full idea of exactly what a blog is and how it works and sort of the history of blogging and that sort of thing. So let's have a quick discussion on that. Well, first of all, the development of blogs and blogging technologies is one of the most remarkable web-based developments that we've seen in really the history of the internet. It has just exploded in the last few years. And blogging really began as a means for political opinion, sharing political opinion, but now in the modern day, we can find blogs on literally every subject. Cooking, fishing, blogging, auto repair, you name it. There's a blog out there. Someone has created a blog for pretty much every topic imaginable, which is very, very cool because now all of a sudden what we have is this explosion in ideas and information and opinions and all the rest of it. And what's fantastic about blogging is the really good blogs rise to the top, and the blogs that aren't sharing very valuable information, that aren't really sort of expressing very valuable content, they of course fall to the bottom, right? So it's kind of a neat platform. Blogging allows writers and artists, photographers, business owners, and pretty much anybody else to maintain a presence online and publish regular content. And what's so fascinating about all this is all of these people may not possess the technical skill to actually build a traditional website. So that's why blogging has really, really exploded. So in other words, if you aren't that comfortable with web design, if you're not that comfortable with coding HTML and working with CSS and all the rest of it, what's so amazing here is that we have this platform that's essentially going to do all the heavy lifting for us so that we, the creatives, the artists, the business owners, the photographers, we can focus on creating really, really killer content, right? Now, the term blog is actually short for the phrase weblog, and blogs began as early as 1994, if you can imagine. That's like the ice age in terms of internet time anyway. It all began in the form of online journaling, and towards the late 90s, it began gaining popularity, but then by 2004, blogging exploded online, and that's really where we've seen this huge increase in bloggers and blog sites. Now, most blogs have several common elements that you'll see. As you begin surfing around and visiting other blogs, you'll start to see these common threads, these common elements. The first common element that we see in most blogs anyway, is a chronological order of content. These pieces of content are called posts, and the content is in reverse chronological order with the most recent post at the top. That's usually how it works. Now, this chronological order of posts is what's referred to as the blog loop, and we'll talk more about the blog loop as we begin working inside WordPress and building up our blog. But the idea here is older posts appear towards the bottom of the loop, and newer posts appear towards the top of the loop. And we can control how many posts are displayed on a given page, and we can set up all sorts of different customization. The other thing that most blogs have in common is a way to archive all of these posts and all of this content. And this can be done in many different ways, but we can archive our content by category. We can archive our content by month. That's another way to do it. And there's a third way that's usually used, which is by using something called tags. You can create archives based on tags, and we'll take a look at all of this during our time here together. So hopefully this has kind of given you a sense of exactly what a blog is and how blogging actually functions, and a little bit of history there for you on blogging as well. Okay, well, probably the best place to begin here for you and I during our WordPress journey together here is to answer the question, what is a blog exactly? Well, you probably already have a rough idea of exactly what a blog is, but you might not have a sort of a full idea of exactly what a blog is and how it works and sort of the history of blogging and that sort of thing. So let's have a quick discussion on that. Well, first of all, the development of blogs and blogging technologies is one of the most remarkable web-based developments that we've seen in really the history of the internet. It has just exploded in the last few years. And blogging really began as a means for political opinion, sharing political opinion, but now in the modern day, we can find blogs on literally every subject. Cooking, fishing, blogging, auto repair, you name it. There's a blog out there. Someone has created a blog for pretty much every topic imaginable, which is very, very cool because now all of a sudden what we have is this explosion in ideas and information and opinions and all the rest of it. And what's fantastic about blogging is the really good blogs rise to the top, and the blogs that aren't sharing very valuable information, that aren't really sort of expressing very valuable content, they of course fall to the bottom, right? So it's kind of a neat platform. Blogging allows writers and artists, photographers, business owners, and pretty much anybody else to maintain a presence online and publish regular content. And what's so fascinating about all this is all of these people may not possess the technical skill to actually build a traditional website. So that's why blogging has really, really exploded. So in other words, if you aren't that comfortable with web design, if you're not that comfortable with coding HTML and working with CSS and all the rest of it, what's so amazing here is that we have this platform that's essentially going to do all the heavy lifting for us so that we, the creatives, the artists, the business owners, the photographers, we can focus on creating really, really killer content, right? Now, the term blog is actually short for the phrase weblog, and blogs began as early as 1994, if you can imagine. That's like the Ice Age in terms of internet time anyway. It all began in the form of online journaling, and towards the late 90s, it began gaining popularity, but then by 2004, blogging exploded online, and that's really where we've seen this huge increase in bloggers and blog sites. Now, most blogs have several common elements that you'll see. As you begin surfing around and visiting other blogs, you'll start to see these common threads, these common elements. The first common element that we see in most blogs anyway, is a chronological order of content. These pieces of content are called posts, and the content is in reverse chronological order with the most recent post at the top. That's usually how it works. Now, this chronological order of posts is what's referred to as the blog loop, and we'll talk more about the blog loop as we begin working inside WordPress and building up our blog. But the idea here is older posts appear towards the bottom of the loop, and newer posts appear towards the top of the loop. And we can control how many posts are displayed on a given page, and we can set up all sorts of different customization. The other thing that most blogs have in common is a way to archive all of these posts and all of this content. And this can be done in many different ways, but we can archive our content by category. We can archive our content by month. That's another way to do it. And there's a third way that's usually used, which is by using something called tags. You can create archives based on tags, and we'll take a look at all of this during our time here together. So hopefully this has kind of given you a sense of exactly what a blog is and how blogging actually functions, and a little bit of history there for you on blogging as well. Okay, so the next question, what is WordPress? Well, what I've done here is I've pointed my browser to WordPress.org. You can certainly do the same on your side if you want. This is, of course, the home of WordPress online. And I'll just kind of read through this little tag bit here because this is kind of interesting. WordPress is a state-of-the-art publishing platform with a focus on aesthetics, web standards, and usability. I love this line. WordPress is both free and priceless at the same time. So what WordPress is it's a blogging application. It's a blogging platform. It was started back in 2003 as an open source software project. Now, do you know about open source? Have you heard about open source? Well, what open source means is it means developers and programmers can extend it and customize it. And as far as the end users like you and I, it's free for us to use and install on our computers and work with. So here's another example of open source that I'm sure you know about. I'm using the Firefox web browser. I didn't pay for Firefox. I was able to download it for free. And if I were a developer, I could customize it further. I could create what are called add-ons or plugins for the application to extend the capabilities of the software. It's exactly the same with WordPress. And that's why WordPress is so popular. It's free, it's open source, it's available to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live. You can work with WordPress. It's fantastic stuff. WordPress itself is powerful, it's easy to use, and as I say, it's fully customizable. Now, that said, there are 3 different ways to go about using WordPress. One way is to create a free account on WordPress.com, and you can see there's a link for that right here. Get a free blog on WordPress.com, so you don't have to spend $1 to create an online presence using WordPress. It's insane. So you can create a business presence if you want. You can actually sell products online. It wouldn't cost you any money to set that up. Or you could set up a personal opinion blog, or maybe a blog for your church organization or a community organization, or who the heck knows, right? It's fantastic stuff. So that's one way, setting up your free account on WordPress.com. Another way to work with WordPress is to download the latest version of WordPress. Here it's 2.9.2. I could download that and then install it on an existing hosting account. And that's normally what I do myself. I've got hosting services provided by another company, and I simply install WordPress on that account. And then finally, a third way to work, and this is often a method that more experienced developers use, is they install and run WordPress on their machine, their actual local computer. This is called a local installation of WordPress, and that's something that I do quite a bit as well. So those are your 3 options. Now, WordPress itself is comprised of a set of PHP files that are assembled on the web server to compile into HTML pages. It's using server-based technologies to serve up the pages of our blog. This HTML, or our pages inside our blog, are all under the control of CSS, cascading style sheets. WordPress doesn't have to be used for blogging, by the way, either. So in other words, a WordPress site doesn't have to be a blog. Now, the appeal of a blog is creating regular posts, setting up this chronological order of posts, which we just talked about a moment ago, and also allowing for the ability for your visitors to comment on your posts, right? So those are really the big draws for blogging. That and the fact that it's so easy and simple to actually set up a blog. However, if you want, you can use WordPress to create a traditional static website with static pages. In other words, no posts, no chronological order of those posts, and no comments. So just static pages by themselves. And later on, I'll show you how to actually go about setting up these static pages, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can use WordPress as a substitute for traditional HTML editors like Dreamweaver. And again, you don't need to know a lick of code. No HTML, no CSS, which is awesome. Now, that said, if you have Dreamweaver, and if you have an understanding and a working knowledge of HTML and CSS, you're going to be ahead of the game, especially if you want to get into customizing your blog, which of course is definitely possible. Last but not least, your WordPress blog can also be used as a content management system, or what's referred to as a CMS. So in other words, what you can do is, let's say for example, you're setting up a site for your company and you want to have other employees in the company also adding content to the blog, but you don't want them to be messing around with the formatting, and you want to be able to control the way that their content gets formatted and displayed online. You can definitely use WordPress to achieve that as well. So as you can see, WordPress is not only about blogging. There's a lot of different uses for it. So hopefully that all makes sense. So next up, what we'll do is we'll see to actually setting up WordPress so that we can actually start to use it. Let's take a quick moment and talk about how a blog is going to function. It's quite a little bit different, I'm sure, than the way that you are used to working, but once you kind of get the hang of it, everything's going to be super easy. You'll see how flexible and how easy all of this actually is. So what I'm looking at right now is actually the blog that you and I, believe it or not, are going to wind up creating. And as you can see, there's a whole lot of graphical content in here. There's a whole lot in terms of text content and all the rest of it, right? It's pretty wild, pretty cool stuff, right? And by the way, we hardly used any code. I think it's safe to say we didn't use any code, although there's a tiny little bit that we do wind up using to actually put all of this together, if you can believe it. It's pretty cool. Now, let me show you this here. What we have sort of in the main area of the blog are our posts, our blog posts. So I have a bunch of posts that I created here, working with color and Flash and understanding Flash's drawing models and so on, right? And this is the blog loop, by the way. This is what I was referring to earlier as the blog loop. So this post here, working with color in Flash, is the most recent post. And prior to that, I created understanding Flash's drawing models. And then prior to that, we had creating shapes in Flash. This is the chronological order of our blog, right? And again, that's really one of the big draws to getting into blogging in the first place, right? And later on, you'll see how we can go about controlling how many posts actually show up on this page. Maybe I want to set it up so that only the most recent post shows up on the front page of my blog, right? We could certainly achieve something like that, right? So that's the idea here. Now, this is what I would call the front end of the blog, if that makes sense, the live side of the blog. When you go to my blog, this is what you're going to see, right? But what's happening, though, is we also have what I call the back end. What's happening sort of in this administration portion of your blog. You can refer to it as the blog admin, or you could call it the admin console, or simply your blog's back end, whatever you want to call it. And I have that opened up inside another tab here inside Firefox. This is the back end of WordPress. And this is where we can go about making changes to our blog. We can apply some customization. For example, we can change what's referred to as the blog theme, which is the presentation, the styling of the blog. We can create new posts, write new posts. We can create static pages. We can moderate comments. Basically, all the meat and potatoes, all the guts, is all happening inside this interface here. And I'm going to tour you through this interface in just a little while so you kind of get a feel for it. But that's really the idea, is I can come in here and I can control what's happening on the live side of the blog. I hope that makes sense. So when you're surfing around and you are visiting other people's blogs, of course, what you're doing is you're looking at the live side of their blog. But always remember that with every blog, they have their own back end, their own admin console for their blog as well. And it'll function in a very similar way to the admin console for your blog. So there you go. So I hope that all makes sense. Again, it's a kind of a different way of working, especially if you're coming from a traditional web design background. Perhaps you're used to building static pages in Dreamweaver. That's really kind of my background. That's where I'm coming from anyway. So admittedly for myself, it took maybe, well, it wasn't too long, maybe half a day or so, just trying to get used to working with sort of this back end here and seeing the results that I would actually have on the live blog. And that's really not an issue with WordPress. It's really more myself, because when I sort of fall into a way of working, it's hard for me to kind of get out of that way of thinking. So this is kind of a different way of working and a different way of approaching web design. But that said, it's unbelievably awesome and it's unbelievably powerful once you kind of get used to it all. Now, of course, before we can really get rocking and rolling with WordPress, we need a WordPress installation. Now, there's 3 different ways that you can go about working with WordPress. What we can do is we can go and create a free account on WordPress.com, which is what you and I are going to do in this exercise. The other thing that we can do is we can set up a WordPress blog on an existing hosting account. And we'll do that in the next exercise. And the third option that we have is we can actually install WordPress locally. What that means is creating a WordPress blog on our local machine or our actual desktop or laptop computer. And we're not going to do that in this series. It's a little bit more involved, a little bit more technically challenging, but if you are interested, if you're on the PC side, you can check out XAMPP, that's X-A-M-P, you can just Google that, or if you're on the Mac side, you can check out MAMP, M-A-M-P. In any regard, let's go and set up our free WordPress.com blog account. So of course, what I'm going to do here is I will navigate to WordPress.com. There we are. And unfortunately, the entire page isn't fitting inside my browser, but over in the top right corner, just go ahead and click on Sign Up Now. Okay, great. Now, let's see here. On the page that appears, they're asking for a username, so I'm just going to use my name, Jeff Blake, and they would like a password, so I'll enter in a password. Okay, and we'll confirm that password. All right, and we'll just scroll down here a little bit. What's cool when you're entering in the password is it gives you this password strength indicator. Reminds me of the little battery tester that comes with my package of AA batteries. But anyway, hopefully that is working there for you. Now, go ahead and pop in your email address next. Enter mine in here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use a different email address. There we are. Okay, Legal Flotsam. I have read and agreed to the fascinating terms of service. You can certainly take the time to read through all that. And then down at the bottom here we have give me a blog like whatever your username is, .wordpress.com, or just give me a username, please. Well, make sure you have give me a blog and then click on next down in the bottom left corner. Okay, now let's see. What do we have going on here? Oh, it looks like my email address is already taken. So, you know what? I'll try the other email address that I was going to use previously, and let's see what we get here. I'll click on Next. Okay, now on the next screen that shows up, we can set up our blog domain. So mine is going to be jeffblake.wordpress.com. In other words, when I point my browser to this URL, that would be the URL or the address for my blog, which is great. And then below that, we have the blog title, Jeff Blake's blog, or you can change that to whatever you want. I think I'm going to change this to Jeff's blog. The language for myself is going to be English, and privacy. I would like my blog to appear in search engines like Google and Technorati, and in public listings around WordPress.com. Definitely, I'm going to make sure that that guy's turned on, and then I'll click on Sign Up. Okay, now here's how it works. You can read here, an email has been sent to my email address to activate my account. Check your inbox, and we should get an email sitting inside our inbox, which allows us to verify the email address and verify the account. And if we don't activate our account within 2 days, then we have to start this whole process all over again. So I'm going to go and check my email in just a moment. But in the meantime, what I can do here is I can set up some additional profile information. For example, my first name and my last name, without my screen getting away on me. About myself. Designer, artist. All around nice guy. How's that? Okay, perfect. And I'll go ahead and click on Save Profile. But I still have to go and check my email, and I have to go and verify that account. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that on your own as well, and then I'll meet you back here, and we'll see how we did. Okay, so I just verified my account. I went into my email program, and sure enough, there was an email from WordPress.com waiting for me. And I just clicked on the link inside the email, and that brought me here. And I can see here it's telling me, your account is now active. That's fantastic. Now, if you didn't find the email inside your email program, inside your email client, double check that it's not inside your spam folder or your junk mail folder or something like that. It should be there. And if not, just sit tight and it should show up. So now that my account is active, I'm going to go ahead and log in here. So let's click on that login link. This is our WordPress login screen. So my username was Jeff Blake, and my top secret password, add that in as well. I'm going to go remember me and then log in. And I'm going to get Firefox to remember as well. There we go. All right. We are in. This is, what we're looking at here, is the back end of WordPress. That's how it works. That's how it's looking here. Now, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, it probably looks a little too complicated for you at this point. There's all kinds of goodies in here, and we're definitely going to take a tour of all the neat, interesting things that we can see here. Now, don't forget, this is how to set up a free blog on WordPress.com. I'm going to show you one more quick thing. Notice up on the top bar here, this top horizontal bar, it says Jeff's blog, and then it says visit site. Well, a neat trick here, this is kind of off topic, but a neat trick here in Firefox is to hold down my command key here on the Mac, or I suppose it would be the control key on the Windows side, and I'm going to click on this link, and that opens the link in a new browser tab. There's my free blog, there's Jeff's blog, which is actually live online right now. So if you go to jeffblake.wordpress.com, you may see this, or you may not see this. I don't know, by the time you see this, maybe I'll change it, or who knows, that kind of thing. But you can definitely see how that functions. So there's the username .wordpress.com. That's exactly how it works. And then, of course, I can pop into this back end and start creating my posts and start creating categories and pages and all kinds of other wonderful things. So there you go. There's how to set up a free WordPress account. As mentioned previously, another way to run a WordPress blog is to install it on your web host. So in other words, a live hosted account, or I guess you could say a self-hosted account. So in other words, what I have here is the backend for my administration for one of the websites that I run, jeff-blake.com. And right now, there isn't anything there. There isn't anything if you go to jeff-blake.com at this point in time anyway. But I've logged into my admin panel here, and what I want to do is I now want to install WordPress on my live web host. So you may have something similar on your side. You may have a hosting service that allows you to install different applications like WordPress, and you may also have an administration interface like I have. My administration interface is run by something called cPanel, which again you might be familiar with. And if you don't, then hopefully your hosting company can help you set up WordPress on your hosting account. But in any regard, cPanel is pretty popular. A lot of people are using it, and a lot of web hosts are providing it for their users. So I thought I would take a quick moment and show how to install WordPress via cPanel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down here. You can see there's all kinds of icons here. And if I go into an area called Fantastico Deluxe, I'll click on that guy there. And inside Fantastico, you get all kinds of neat, amazing things like content management systems and classified services and all the rest of it. And then underneath blogs there on the left, we have WordPress. So I'm going to click on WordPress. Okay. So there we are. So again, I just want to make sure we all understand here, we are not installing this as a free account on WordPress.com. This is a self-hosted installation of WordPress. I hope that makes sense. So let's see here. There's a short description there. You can go to WordPress.org if you want and find out more about it. The WordPress support form and so on. But what we want is this new installation. And there's the current version that we'll be installing for WordPress. There's the disk space required, followed by the available disk space that we have in our current hosting package. So I'm going to click on New Installation. Okay, wonderful. So that brings me to this screen here. Now I'm running a couple of different domains on this hosting account. So install on domain. So which account or which domain do I want to install this for? Well, I want to install this for jeff-blake.com. Now, what I could do if I wanted to is I could install WordPress into a subdirectory. For example, it could be something like jeff-blake.com/blog. So in other words, that would be the URL. That would be the address that you'd have to go to get to my blog. And if I wanted to do that, then I'd have to type in blog into this field here, right? Most likely with a / at the beginning, something like that, right? But what I want to do is I want to install it on the top level directory, if that makes sense. In other words, when you go to jeff-blake.com, I want it to go right to the WordPress blog, right? That's what we're after here. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If not, you can just read through this paragraph of text here. Admin access data, the administrator username. So we're going to need this whenever we want to log in. So I'm going to use the very cryptic admin for my password. No one will ever guess that, and I'm also using that as the username as well. So admin and admin, because the bad guys will never guess that. In the real world, obviously, you'd have something a little bit more cryptic than that. But anyway, admin nickname, well, I won't tell you what my nickname was in school, but I will type in Jeff. Admin email. Well, I better put in my email address here, jeff@10tonbooks.com. Site name. So this is Jeff's blog, and a description for the blog. A whole lot about nothing. How's that? Okay, great. Now I'm going to go install WordPress. Okay, so Fantastico does its thing here. We have a MySQL database, which has been created. There's the user that will be created for this installation. And let's see here. We chose to install this in the top-level directory, jeff-blake.com. The access URL for our blog will be jeff-blake.com. And we want to continue and finish up this installation, so go ahead and click on Finish Installation. I hope that MySQL thing didn't mess you up, but really it's all happening in the back end, so we don't really need to worry about that too much. Okay, let's see what we have here. Well, first of all, what we can do here, you can read through all of this, by the way, if you want. And what you can do down at the bottom is you can say email the details of this installation to, and maybe I'll do that, jeff@10tonbooks.com. Send that email. I'm going to send that email in just a second, but what I want, though, is I want to go and log in to the back end, to the admin area of my new blog, and this URL here, you might want to jot this down. So, in other words, it's going to be whatever your web address is, .com or .us or .net or whatever it is, /wp-admin. So that's the URL, the path to get to your blog's back end, if you will. And once again, I'm going to hold down Command or Control on the Windows side, and I'll click on that guy. I'll open him in a new tab. We'll take a look at that in a sec. I'm going to click on Send Email, though, and I'm going to go and get that email in just a little while. But what I'll do now is I'll flip over to this tab here, and again, I'm back at this WordPress login screen. So my username and my password. And I'll say, remember me, log in. What the heck, I'll get Firefox to remember that. All right, there's our blog's back end. Okay, so again, this is a self-hosted or a self-running installation of WordPress. You can see that the back end here looks very, very similar to the back end that we had on the free account over on WordPress.com. Once again, I'll hold down Control or Command, click on Visit Site up on this top bar here. And there we go. There's my blog happening there. Very plain, but hey, we have a self-hosted installation of WordPress.